Some nights the feeling isn't quite loneliness, and it isn't sadness either. It's more subtle than that. A sense of distance that settles in quietly, as if something familiar has moved just a little farther away. You may still be surrounded by people, by sounds, by the ordinary details of life, and yet there can be a gentle but unmistakable feeling that you are standing slightly apart from it all. On nights like this, the world can feel as though it is happening on the other side of an invisible line. You can see it, you can hear it, but it doesn't quite reach you in the same way. Even your own thoughts may feel distant, as if they belong to someone else, drifting by rather than arising from within. When the sense of separation appears, the mind often responds in a very human way. It tries to explain the distance. It searches for causes and reasons, replaying moments from the day, from the past, from conversations or memories that feel unresolved. The mind wants to know what created this gap and what might close it again. But tonight, you don't need to find an answer. You don't need to trace the feeling back to its source or decide what it means. The story is not here to diagnose the distance, and it isn't here to take it away. It is simply a place where you can rest while the feeling is present, without having to carry it alone. There is nothing in this story that you need to understand in order to fall asleep. You don't need to remember the ideas. You don't need to agree with them. You don't even need to stay awake for them. If your attention wanders, that is not a problem. If the words blur together, that is often a sign that you are already beginning to rest. As you lie here, notice how the body is already in contact with the surface beneath you. The weight of your back, your shoulders, your legs, supported without effort. You are not holding yourself up. You are being held quietly and continuously, even if you haven't thought about it until now. There is no need to change your breathing. The breath knows how to move on its own. It did so long before you paid attention to it, and it will continue without instruction. You can allow each inhale and exhale to pass through you like a small, unremarkable wave, arriving and leaving without needing to be noticed. This story is about separation, but not in the way the word is usually used. Not as something tragic or dramatic, not as a failure or a flaw or a sign that something is wrong with you. It is about the quiet, ordinary feeling of being a little removed, a little apart, that so many people experience, especially at night. For now, there is nothing you need to do with that feeling. You don't need to push it away, and you don't need to pull it closer. You can let it exist in the background, like the darkness outside the window, present but not demanding anything from you. You are safe to rest here, safe to let the distance remain just as it is. There will be time later to explore it gently, but not yet. For now, you can simply allow the night to hold you exactly where you are. When the feeling of distance stays with us, the mind often assumes it must be telling the truth. It feels natural to think, I am here and the world is out there, as if this separation were simply the way things are, something obvious and unquestionable. This way of seeing is so familiar that we rarely notice it. From an early age, we learn to describe experience in this divided way. There is a self that observes and a world that is observed, a thinker and thoughts, a body and the space around it. Without realizing it, We grow used to standing on one side of an invisible line, looking outward. Modern science has been built upon this habit of separation. In order to study the world, it learned to step back from it, to measure, to observe, to analyze, as if the observer could remain untouched by what is being observed. This way of seeing has given us remarkable knowledge, but it has also quietly shaped how we experience ourselves. Over time, this habit can begin to feel personal. It no longer appears as a method or a perspective, but as reality itself. We begin to feel like a small, separate point inside a much larger world, looking out, trying to understand, trying to keep up. At night, when the usual distractions soften, this sense of separation can become more noticeable. Without the noise of the day, the distance has more space to be felt. The mind may say, I feel cut off, or I don't quite belong, or simply something feels far away. But what if this sense of distance is not a message about who you are or how your life is going? What if it is simply the mind resting in a very old habit? A way of seeing that divides experience into inside and outside, self and world, observer and observed. In Buddhist thought, this division is not treated as a final truth. It is understood as a useful convention, but not the only way experience can appear. The feeling of being separate is not denied, but it is also not taken as proof that separation is absolute. You don't need to accept this idea. You don't need to think about it at all. You can let it sit quietly in the background, like a thought that doesn't need an answer. Tonight is not about replacing one explanation with another. As you listen, you may notice moments when the sense of me here and world there becomes less sharp. It might soften only slightly or only for a moment. That is enough. Nothing more is required. There is no need to force connection, no need to bridge any gap. For now, you can simply rest with the possibility that this feeling of separation is not a problem to solve, but a pattern that can gently loosen on its own. And this habit of separation doesn't only shape how we see the world, it also shapes how we relate to our own experience. Thoughts can begin to feel like objects we are watching from a distance. Emotions may appear as something that happens to us rather than something that moves within us. Even the body can start to feel like a thing we inhabit, instead of something we are quietly living through. When this happens, a subtle tension often follows. The mind feels responsible for managing the distance. It tries to stay alert, to monitor what is happening out there, while also keeping track of what is happening in here. This constant positioning can be exhausting, even if we don't consciously notice it during the day. At night, when the effort to maintain that position softens, the fatigue beneath it can rise to the surface. The sense of being separate may feel heavier then, not because it has grown stronger, but because the usual effort to ignore it has finally paused. What you are feeling now may not be new at all. It may simply be more visible. In the quiet of the night, there is less need to define where you end and where the world begins. The usual markers blur. The edges of experience become less precise. Sounds arrive without clearly belonging to outside. Sensations appear without needing to be claimed as mine. This can feel unfamiliar at first. The mind is used to drawing clear lines. It has practiced doing so for many years. So when those lines begin to soften, even slightly, it may try to redraw them, gently or urgently out of habit rather than necessity. You don't need to stop that habit. You don't need to correct it or replace it. Simply noticing that it exists is already enough. Awareness in this moment does not need to do anything else. If you find yourself drifting, that's fine. If the words begin to fade into the background, that's fine too. This is not a test of attention. It is a space where attention is allowed to loosen its grip. As you rest here, there is no requirement to locate yourself precisely. You don't need to know where you end and the rest of experience begins. For now, it is enough to let the question remain unanswered. Sometimes rest comes not from finding clarity, but from letting go of the need for it. And in that gentle not knowing, something can begin to settle on its own. The effort to stand apart can ease. The need to watch from a distance can soften. Without being pushed or pulled, the sense of separation can quietly lose some of its weight. You don't need to make this happen. You don't need to wait for it either. Just allow the night to continue unfolding, one moment at a time, without asking it to explain itself. There are moments when the world seems to change, even though nothing around you has actually moved. The room is the same. The light hasn't shifted. The sounds outside follow their usual rhythm. And yet something feels different, as if the atmosphere itself has quietly rearranged. You may have noticed this late at night or early in the morning when the mind is not fully awake. A familiar place can feel softer, farther away, or strangely close. Objects lose some of their sharpness. Memories drift in more easily, blending with what you see until it becomes hard to tell where one ends and the other begins. In moments like these, the world does not appear as a fixed thing. It feels shaped by what you are carrying, by the mood of the evening, by the weight of the day that came before it. The same street, the same room, the same view can feel entirely different, depending on how gently or heavily the mind is resting within it. This is not because the world has become unreal. It is because experience is never just what is out there. It is always meeting you halfway, passing through memory, expectation, and feeling before it arrives as something you can name. You may remember a time when a place held comfort, and another time when that same place felt empty. Nothing about the place itself had changed. What changed was the way it was being met, the way it was being received. At night, this becomes easier to notice. Without the constant activity of the day, memories surface more freely. A sound can carry an emotion. A shadow can feel familiar. A quiet room can seem full of presence or gently hollow, without needing to explain why. The mind does not simply observe these moments from a distance. It participates in them. It colors them, not intentionally and not as a mistake, but as part of how experience naturally forms. You don't need to watch this process closely. You don't need to understand it or give it a name. Just noticing that the world can feel different, even when it looks the same, is enough for now. As you rest here, you may feel the edges of experience soften slightly. The boundary between what you are remembering and what you are sensing can blur. That is not something to correct. It is a gentle sign that the mind is loosening its grip, allowing experience to flow without being held too tightly. If your thoughts begin to wander, let them. If images appear without clear meaning, let them pass. There is no need to sort them or make sense of them. Tonight is not about clarity. It is about allowing the mind to rest in the way it naturally moves when it is no longer trying to stay separate. And as that effort eases, even slightly, the feeling of distance can begin to shift. Not because anything has been fixed, but because the space between you and the world was never as solid as it seemed. You don't need to hold on to this thought. You don't need to remember it. You can let it fade gently into the background, the way a memory does as sleep begins to arrive. Sometimes this shift in how the world feels is tied to very small things, a scent that suddenly brings back a memory without asking permission, a sound that feels closer than it should, or farther away than you expect. In these moments it becomes clear that experience is not built from the outside alone. The mind carries layers of remembering that quietly shape what arrives in awareness, not as stories that need to be told, but as tones and textures, a sense of warmth, a trace of heaviness, a feeling of familiarity that doesn't belong to any single moment. At night, these layers tend to surface on their own. There is less effort to organize them, less pressure to keep experience neatly divided. Memories can float through the present without needing to be placed in the past. They simply appear, gently overlapping with what is happening now. This is why the world can sometimes feel closer at night, even as it grows quieter. The distance between what is remembered and what is perceived becomes thinner. The mind stops insisting on clear borders, and experience is allowed to arrive as a soft, continuous field. You don't need to stay with any particular image or feeling. You don't need to follow where it leads. If something fades, let it fade. If something returns, let it return. The movement itself is what matters, not its direction. As sleep approaches, experience often becomes less concerned with accuracy. It no longer needs to be clearly labeled or placed in the right category. A memory can feel present, a sensation can feel familiar, and none of it needs to be explained. In this state, the sense of being a separate observer can begin to dissolve quietly and without effort. There is less need to stand back and watch, less need to keep track of where you are in relation to what is happening. Experience unfolds, and you are already within it. If this feels unfamiliar, that's okay. If it feels comforting, that's okay too. There is no correct response. You can simply allow the night to continue, letting the mind move in the way it naturally does when it is no longer trying to stay awake. And as this movement slows, the feeling of separation may soften further, not because it has been removed, but because it no longer needs to be held in place. Like a line drawn in water, it fades on its own without being erased. When the sense of separation lingers, it often brings a quiet tension with it. Not always anxiety in a sharp or obvious form, but a subtle alertness that never fully rests. The mind stays slightly watchful, as if it needs to keep track of where everything is and where you are in relation to it. Over time, this gentle vigilance can become tiring. The body may feel heavy without a clear reason. The thoughts may circle without arriving anywhere. Sleep can feel close, yet somehow just out of reach. From a psychological point of view, experiences like this are not signs that something is wrong. They are signs that the mind has been working very hard to maintain a certain way of relating to the world, a way that keeps things separate, organized, and under control. Much of this effort happens quietly beneath awareness. The mind learns, often early on, how to stay oriented, how to remain aware of its surroundings, how to protect itself by staying slightly apart. These patterns are not mistakes, they are forms of care that once served a purpose. At night, however, the need for that effort begins to fade. The structures that hold experience neatly in place start to loosen. And when they do, the fatigue beneath them can finally be felt. Not as a problem, but as a natural response to having held so much for so long. In moments like this, the mind does not need to be corrected. It does not need to be reassured with explanations. Often what it needs most is permission to stop maintaining the distance it has been holding all day. You may notice this as a softening in the body, a slight drop in the shoulders, a feeling of sinking or spreading or becoming less defined. These sensations do not mean anything in particular. They are simply signs that effort is being released. Psychology sometimes speaks about patterns, habits, and learned responses. But here, there is no need to trace them back or understand how they formed. Awareness alone is enough. The simple recognition that the mind has been doing its best can allow it to rest. As you lie here, there is no expectation that you observe yourself closely. You don't need to monitor your thoughts or check how relaxed you are becoming. Rest does not require supervision. If a feeling of distance remains, you can let it be there. If it begins to soften, you can let that happen too. There is no correct outcome to arrive at. The night does not ask you to resolve anything. Gradually, as effort continues to ease, the sense of being on the outside can lose its urgency. Not because it has been analyzed or understood, but because it no longer needs to be defended. The mind can step out of its watchful position and simply be present with what is already here. And in that presence, without effort or intention, sleep often finds its own way in. Sometimes the effort to stay oriented shows up in very small ways, a habit of listening for sounds even when the room is quiet, a tendency to keep track of time even when there is nowhere you need to be. These are not signs of restlessness. They are signs of a mind that has learned to stay prepared. As the night deepens, that preparation can begin to loosen. The mind no longer needs to scan the surroundings or hold experience at arm's length. It can allow sensations to come closer or drift farther away without deciding which is safer. You may notice moments when thoughts slow, not because they have been solved, but because they are no longer being watched. They can pass like distant lights, appearing and fading without drawing you in. There is no need to follow them and no need to push them aside. The body often responds first. Breathing may deepen on its own. Muscles may release in small, unplanned ways. A feeling of warmth or heaviness can spread, as if the body has finally been given permission to rest where it is. In psychology, rest is sometimes described as a shift from effort to ease. But you don't need to make that shift happen. It happens naturally when effort is no longer required, when nothing is asking you to stay alert or to remain separate from what you are experiencing. If at any point you notice yourself checking in, wondering whether this is working, you can let that go too. There's nothing here to get right. Sleep is not something you achieve. It is something that arrives when there is enough space for it to do so. As this space opens, the sense of distance that once felt so clear can begin to lose its shape. It may not disappear entirely, but it no longer needs to be held in place. Like a posture that relaxes when it is no longer needed, it can soften without instruction. You don't need to stay with these words. You don't need to remember where you are in the story. You can let the sound of the voice become part of the background, merging with the quiet of the room. From here, the night can continue on its own. The mind has done enough. The body knows how to rest, and you are free to let both settle slowly and without effort as sleep draws closer. There is a quiet assumption that often follows the feeling of separation, the idea that something must be brought back together, that a distance has appeared and now it needs to be crossed, that you must return to something you have lost or recover a connection that has been broken. But what if nothing ever truly separated in the first place? What if the feeling of distance was never a gap that opened, but a way of seeing that gently formed and can just as gently loosen? Much of the effort we feel comes from trying to reconnect, to feel whole again, to feel aligned with the world, with others, with ourselves. And while that longing is deeply human, it can also carry a quiet strain, the sense that rest will come later after something has been repaired. Tonight there is no need to repair anything, no need to return anywhere. Nothing is missing that must be found before you can rest. The experience you are having now is already complete. Not perfect, not ideal, but complete in the sense that nothing stands outside of it, waiting to be added. The feeling of being separate can exist within this completeness. It does not cancel it out. It does not prove that something has gone wrong. It is simply one way experience can appear, especially when the mind has been working hard for a long time. Sometimes when effort softens, there is a subtle shift, not a dramatic realization, and not a moment of insight you could put into words, just a quiet easing, a sense that the boundary you were watching so closely no longer needs your attention. You may notice this as a gentle blending, the sound of the voice and the silence around it becoming less distinct. The body and the surface beneath it no longer clearly separate, breathing happening without needing to be followed. In these moments there is no clear place where you end and the rest of experience begins. Not because you have disappeared and not because the world has absorbed you, but because the need to draw that line has relaxed. Nothing has been joined. Nothing has merged. Nothing has been made into one. The sense of effort around separation has simply stepped aside. This is not something you need to notice or hold on to. If it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, that is fine too. Rest does not depend on having a particular experience. As the night continues, experience can move without being divided into parts. Sound, sensation, memory, and breath can flow together without needing to be sorted. There is no requirement to understand what belongs where. You don't need to stay aware of this. You don't need to keep track of whether the distance is still there. Awareness itself can rest without monitoring its own state. If thoughts appear, let them appear. If they fade, let them fade. Nothing needs to be followed through to the end. The idea that you must return to something before you can rest can soften now. There is nowhere else you need to be. No earlier version of yourself you need to recover. No connection that must be rebuilt in order for sleep to arrive. Right here, as you are, experience is already unfolding as a whole, not divided, not repaired, just present. You can let these words drift into the background. They do not need your attention anymore. From here, the night can carry you forward on its own without asking you to do anything at all. Sometimes the idea that something must be reunited is so quiet that we don't notice it at all. It lives underneath the effort to feel better, underneath the wish to fall asleep more easily, underneath the hope that tomorrow will feel more connected than today. But even that hope can rest now, not because it was wrong, but because it doesn't need to be active in this moment. Sleep does not require you to feel complete in a particular way. It arrives when effort loosens, not when something is achieved. You may notice that as the night deepens, the need to define your experience becomes less important. You don't need to know whether you feel close or far, whole or fragmented, present or drifting. Experience can be just as it is without being measured. There can be a quiet comfort in this, not the comfort of certainty, but the comfort of not needing certainty, of not having to decide what this moment means or where it is leading. As attention softens, the sense of a center can fade slightly, not disappear, but lose its sharpness. There is less emphasis on a single point called me and more space for experience to unfold gently on its own. This does not require trust. It does not require belief. It happens naturally when attention is no longer gathered tightly around a sense of separation. You may feel this as a spreading quality, as if experience is no longer happening in one place, but everywhere at once. Sound, sensation, and breath sharing the same quiet space. If this feels unfamiliar, you don't need to stay with it. If it feels pleasant, you don't need to hold on to it. Either way, there is nothing you need to do. The night is already moving forward. Time is passing without your involvement. Breathing continues. The body rests where it rests. There is no moment you are waiting for, no point at which something finally comes back together. The idea of reunion can soften and dissolve like a thought that no longer needs to be finished. From here, rest does not depend on connection or disconnection. It does not depend on how close you feel to anything at all. It depends only on allowing experience to continue quietly and without interruption. You can let the sound of the voice blend with the silence again. You don't need to listen closely. You don't need to remember what was said. Nothing needs to be reunited. Nothing needs to be resolved. The night is enough, just as it is. There is no need to notice how far you have drifted. Awareness doesn't need to keep track of itself. It can soften and spread, like light dimming at the end of the day, without anyone deciding when it should fade. The body may feel heavier now, or lighter, or simply less present than before. None of these sensations require attention. They can come and go on their own, without being named. Time can feel different here. Moments may stretch or slip past unnoticed. There is no schedule to follow, no pace to maintain. The night moves at its own speed. You may find that the space around you feels quieter, even if sounds are still present. They no longer ask to be identified. They arrive, pass through, and dissolve into the background without effort. Thoughts may appear less often now. When they do, they may feel incomplete, as if they lose interest halfway through forming. This is natural. The mind is no longer arranging experience into clear shapes. Breathing continues, steady and unremarkable, sometimes shallow, sometimes deep, sometimes barely noticed at all. Each breath arrives and leaves without needing to be guided. There is no reason to stay awake for this, no reason to listen closely. You can let the sound of the voice become just another texture in the room, blending with the darkness. If awareness slips away for a while, that is fine. If it returns briefly, that is fine too. There is no need to mark the difference. There is no need to notice how far you have drifted. Awareness doesn't need to keep track of itself. It can soften and spread like light dimming at the end of the day without anyone deciding when it should fade. The body may feel heavier now, or lighter, or simply less present than before. None of these sensations require attention. They can come and go on their own without being named. Time can feel different here. Moments may stretch or slip past unnoticed. There is no schedule to follow, no pace to maintain. The night moves at its own speed. You may find that the space around you feels quieter, even if sounds are still present. They no longer ask to be identified. They arrive, pass through, and dissolve into the background without effort. Thoughts may appear less often now. When they do, they may feel incomplete, as if they lose interest halfway through forming. This is natural. The mind is no longer arranging experience into clear shapes. Breathing continues, steady and unremarkable, sometimes shallow, sometimes deep, sometimes barely noticed at all. Each breath arrives and leaves without needing to be guided. There is no reason to stay awake for this, no reason to listen closely. You can let the sound of the voice become just another texture in the room, blending with the darkness. If awareness slips away for a while, that is fine. If it returns briefly, that is fine too. There is no need to mark the difference. The body knows how to rest. The mind knows how to drift. Neither of them needs instruction. Experience can continue unfolding quietly, without being divided into moments or meanings. Nothing needs to be held together. Nothing needs to be followed to the end. And so the night simply goes on, gently and without interruption, carrying everything forward at its own pace. And there is no need to notice where it is going. The movement itself is enough. No direction is required. No destination needs to be held in mind. The body can remain exactly as it is. No adjustment, no settling into a better position. Whatever posture you are in is already being supported. Awareness can drift in and out without being called back. Moments of listening may fade into moments of quiet and return again without announcement. There is no difference that needs to be marked. Thoughts may appear only as fragments now, half-formed sentences, images without a center. They do not need to complete themselves in order to pass. Breathing continues, sometimes noticed, sometimes not. Each breath arrives and leaves without needing to be followed. There is nothing to synchronize with, nothing to keep pace with. The sense of time can thin further here. Minutes may stretch or disappear entirely. The night does not keep track. The edges of experience may soften even more. Sound, sensation, and silence blending gently without one standing apart from the others. Nothing needs to be held apart. If awareness slips away, it does so naturally. If it returns just as naturally. Neither movement requires attention. The night continues, unbroken, carrying everything forward without effort, without emphasis, without pause. And nothing needs to keep up with it. The movement of the night does not ask for attention. It does not slow when awareness fades, and it does not hurry when thoughts appear. It simply continues steady and unremarkable. The body can rest inside this movement without adjusting to it. No need to follow along. No need to fall behind. Whatever's happening in the body right now is already included. You may notice areas that feel warm or cool or barely present at all. Sensations can soften at the edges, becoming less specific. They don't need to be named. They don't need to be checked. If a part of the body draws attention for a moment, that's fine. If it fades again, that's fine too. Awareness can touch something lightly, then move on without explanation. Breathing continues somewhere in the background. Sometimes it feels close, sometimes distant, sometimes it disappears from attention entirely. Each variation is natural, and none of them require correction. The sense of space may begin to feel different now. The room may feel farther away, or closer, or simply less important than before. There is no need to decide which. Sounds can arrive without forming a scene, a tone, a hum, a brief disturbance that dissolves as soon as it appears. They do not need to be placed inside or outside. Time can feel less like a sequence here. Moments may overlap gently. Pauses may stretch without being measured. Nothing needs to mark their passing. Thoughts, when they appear, may feel thin and unfinished. They don't carry urgency. They don't ask to be followed. They can fade in the middle without reaching a conclusion. There is no reason to stay alert for what comes next. Nothing is arriving that needs preparation. Nothing is about to happen that requires your involvement. The night continues in the same quiet way, carrying breath, sensation, sound, and silence together, not separating them, not holding them apart. And awareness can continue to drift within this flow, touching and releasing, without needing to stay anywhere in particular. And there is no need to notice how long this has been happening. Time does not need to be counted here. It can stretch, thin, or dissolve into the background without anyone keeping track. The night has its own pace. It does not rush forward, and it does not wait. It moves evenly, like a steady current that carries everything without effort. You may sense that the idea of minutes has softened. Moments no longer line up one after another. They overlap gently or drift past without leaving a mark. There's no point you are meant to reach, no span of time you need to remain aware of. The night continues whether attention stays or slips away. Stillness can feel different now, not empty, but quiet in a way that does not ask to be filled. As if there is nothing missing from the silence and nothing waiting to arrive. The space around you can feel wider or closer or simply less defined than before. Edges blur without disappearing, and nothing needs to be sharpened again. Sounds may become fewer, or they may blend together, a distant tone, a soft shift in the room. Each one arrives and fades without changing the overall quiet. The body can remain exactly where it is within this stillness. There is no need to sink deeper or relax further. Whatever level of rest is present now is already enough. Awareness can continue to drift without direction. It does not need to return to any particular point. It can hover, then soften, then thin out again. If a moment passes without clear awareness, that moment passes easily. Nothing is lost. Nothing needs to be recovered. The night holds everything gently, without emphasis. Breath, sound, the sense of being here, and the sense of not needing to be anywhere else. Time continues quietly, without announcing itself. The night continues quietly, without interruption, and everything moves forward together without being carried toward anything in particular. And sound can become something you don't need to listen to anymore. It can exist without being followed, without being identified, without needing to mean anything. The sound of the voice can soften into a texture, not words to understand, just a gentle presence moving through the quiet. It can drift closer, then farther away, without asking for attention. Other sounds may appear at the edges of awareness, a faint hum, a distant movement, or nothing at all. Silence itself can feel full enough without needing to be noticed. You don't need to stay aware of what you hear. Listening can loosen. Hearing can continue on its own, without effort or focus. Pauses may begin to feel longer than the sounds around them. Or sounds may dissolve into the pauses. There is no clear boundary between them now. The mind does not need to stay oriented here. It does not need to check whether anything has changed. It can allow sound and silence to pass through, leaving no trace. If awareness drifts away from sound entirely, that is fine. If it returns briefly, that is fine too. Nothing needs to be held in place. Breathing continues somewhere beneath it all, sometimes audible, sometimes silent, sometimes not noticed at all. Each breath arrives and leaves without asking to be followed. There is no signal hidden in the quiet, no message waiting inside the silence. The absence of sound does not need to be filled. The night continues in this gentle balance, sound appearing and fading, silence holding everything in between, neither one asking for more space than the other. Awareness can thin further now, not disappearing, just spreading out, less centered, less defined, and the flow continues quietly and evenly, with nothing standing apart, and nothing needing to be gathered back together, and nothing needs to be gathered back together. Experience can remain gently dispersed, without returning to a center. There is no point it needs to collect around. Awareness can feel very light now, almost transparent, present without needing to be located anywhere in particular. The sense of the body may drift to the background, not gone, just no longer asking to be noticed. Weight rests where it rests, without being checked. Thoughts may no longer form clearly enough to follow. They can pass as impressions, as fragments, as movements without shape. None of them need to finish. Sound may thin further, pauses may lengthen, or everything may blur together into a quiet, even field. There is no difference that needs to be recognized. Breathing continues, steady and uncomplicated, sometimes felt, sometimes only implied, sometimes not present in awareness at all. There is no edge you are approaching, no moment you need to arrive at. The night does not change when awareness fades. If there are stretches of time with no clear experience, those stretches pass easily. Nothing interrupts them. Nothing needs to pull you back. The flow continues without emphasis, without direction, without asking anything of you. Awareness can thin further still, so light it barely registers, so spread out it no longer gathers. The night holds everything quietly, breath, silence, the soft movement of time, and everything continues evenly and without interruption, just as it has been doing. And there is no need for experience to settle into a single place. It can remain spread out gently without collecting itself. Nothing needs to return to a center. Awareness may feel faint now, not absent, just less concentrated, as if it no longer needs to hold its shape. The body can fade into the background of attention, still present, still supported, but no longer asking to be checked or adjusted. Sensations may appear only as soft impressions, not clear enough to name, not stable enough to follow. They come and go without forming a pattern. Thoughts, if they arise at all, may feel distant, like echoes that don't belong to any voice. They don't ask to be completed. They dissolve on their own. Sound may seem very far away now, or very close, or simply irrelevant. Silence can feel wide enough to hold everything. Breathing continues without drawing attention. It does not need to be noticed to continue. It moves on its own, quietly and steadily. There is no point you are approaching, no transition you need to witness. The night does not announce changes. If awareness thins to almost nothing, that thinning passes easily. Nothing pulls it back. Nothing needs to interrupt it. Experience continues without structure, without emphasis, without direction, carried by the night just as it is. The flow continues quietly. Nothing changes that needs attention. Breathing continues. Sound continues. Silence continues. Awareness may drift or remain or thin until it is barely there. None of this needs to be noticed. Pauses can lengthen. Words can soften. Meaning can dissolve into sound. The night continues evenly, gently, without interruption. Nothing needs to respond. Nothing needs to follow. Everything moves on its own, and the flow continues. There is nothing else you need to do. Sometimes peace is not something we must learn. It is something we remember. The world pulls us outward, toward goals, toward noise, toward endless motion. But when the heart grows quiet, we begin to sense a deeper rhythm beneath it all, a rhythm that has always been waiting, softly calling us home. This quiet home lives inside you, but it can be easy to forget. That is why Gassho exists, not to add anything new, but to help you return. A space built for stillness, for reflection, for the gentle work of being. In its name, Gassho, there is a gesture, two hands meeting in respect and gratitude, a gesture of unity between self and world, between heart and breath, between sound and silence. When you open the Gassho app, you are not entering another screen. You are stepping into a small temple that travels with you, a place where you can sit without expectation, breathe without demand, and listen without effort. Inside you will find guided meditations, stories inspired by Buddhist wisdom, and the steady presence of sutras, not as lessons, but as companions. The sound you are about to hear is one of those companions, a sound carried through generations, a sound shaped by breath, devotion, and time. You do not need to understand the words. You do not need to follow the rhythm. You do not need to stay awake for it. Let the sound arrive as it is. Let it move through awareness without resistance. Let it remain even as attention fades. There is nothing left to do, only to rest. Let the breath settle. Let the body sink, and simply listen. The sound of the sutra continues, offered from a temple in the quiet mountains of Koyasan, shared here through the Gassho app whenever you wish to return to silence.